Hi, everybody. Good evening. It is the 22nd of April. And tonight we're going to talk about the first adjustment, the first week when you come to Evoke Therapy programs. And really, I know that this is a webinar that's going to be meant for people and shown to people that are just enrolled in our program. But I do think that some of the principles, some of the concepts, some of the parenting skills are applicable to all of us. So, and toward the end, I'm also going to ask any experienced parents in attendance to pass on any wisdom or any comments to Stephanie. Stephanie will then pass those on to me, and we'll share those with the group. So we'll just get right into it then. So let's talk about that first phone call, that first day. The first thing that's going to happen is you're going to receive a phone call from the admissions and also from your parent coordinator. This parent coordinator is very important for all of you because this is the person that you can handle 90% of your questions around logistics with the entire program. And they're going to give you that initial impression of your child. So your child might be coming in angry or sulking, or they might be coming in very charming. So they're going to give you that first snapshot impression. It's not meant to be a really clinically complex update, but they're just going to share with you that they've laid eyes on your child after they've arrived. You're going to learn about the mail protocol, and this can be a little bit different for a few of the different therapists at Evoke, but essentially, it's important that you get the mail in the night before, the morning of your therapist going out in the field. So the day before and during the middle of the day, so that it has enough time to process. And if there are any questions, then we can reach out to you in time enough that those letters can be had because the therapist brings them out to the field and they're the only one who brings them out of the field also. So they become, in essence, the mail carrier for the program. And the reason that we do that is we want our clients and our students to have a process around their letters. Those can be some of the most vulnerable and difficult times for them. Can bring up a lot of emotions, can bring up homesickness or anger or frustration or a sense of discouragement in some way because those letters often reflect back what's going on with you and what's going on with them and really ask them in many cases to take a look at themselves. So make sure that you get those letters in the day before. And I'll talk a little bit about the curriculum and the credits. So all of our high school students can have access to two credits, two full credits, and that comes in half a credit of PE, half a credit of psychology, half a credit of science, and half a credit of English. So that's the equivalent of two credits. That's a half a credit each. So it's a half a year each in those subjects. And in my experience, and I'm sure a lot of you who are more experienced would say the same thing, the exposure and the experience of being at Evoke is worth at least that much. So, and really why we do that is we're not expecting for most of our high school students to keep up. We know there's going to be some credit recovery that's going to be done down the line for them, but we want them to have the experience of having school requirements because the most common complaint, and there are a lot of different kinds of complaints that parents enroll their children for, but the most common complaint or factor that contributed to parents sending their children here was struggling in school. And so if we take away that one aspect that is most common, and then we congratulate ourselves and the child on doing great work when they're not even exposed to the thing that was the most challenging to them, I think we've done a disservice. So we include that curriculum. There are also opportunities, and you can talk to your therapist about college credits. We have that available for young adults, and so you can look into that too. Of course, you know about the webinar program because you're watching it. My goal is to have two per week if I'm not traveling, and that's one open forum and one topic. We're going to be going through the old topic library in the next several weeks and bringing it up to speed with the fresh new Evoke look. So that's what's going on. You can search them by text, so you can type in a word. In fact, I had to look up one today, and you can search it by text, or you can search it by tag. We've done our best, although so many of them overlap and cover several areas. We've tried to tag them with categories, and you can tag them with more than one category, so you can look them up by category and excuse me, find one that's relevant for you that way. If you would like a mentor, and this is an important part of the program, especially during that first week, we have parents who have their children and they have transitioned out of the program and they want to give back. They want to give back because they remember what it was like during those early weeks, those early days in the program. And so there's somebody who can emotionally hold your hand through that process and share with you in a way that I don't think professionals can do in quite the same way. So you have to make sure that you have a mentor or a requested mentor. Some people, some consultants don't want parents to have mentors because they like to do that process for them. So if that's the case, then you can check with your parent coordinator also. And one other thing I want to say about the mentor program, it's also a fantastic way for parents to keep growing. Not only is it a service to the new parents, but we learn more when we are asked to teach something. So being able to share with other parents, it's the same that I go through every week doing the webinars or doing therapy. I get as much out of this process as anyone about reminding myself. In fact, I was thinking about it just recently about this idea about how lucky I am. I was running a parent support group and how lucky I am to be constantly thinking about these principles because they are something that I need to be reminded of every day in my relationship with my children and my wife and others. So that's an important part of it, and it really does mirror or become a parallel process for what goes on in the field because the older, more tenured students will also mentor the newer students in the group, and it benefits both ways. You'll schedule a first phone call with your therapist, and you'll have a 1 hour phone call with your therapist. If there is a special crisis or a special need, of course, you can reach out to your therapist. If you have needs that are more logistical, informational, please contact your parent coordinator, and they can help you out there. You're going to be given a number, phone number, and a code to call in, so that we'll be able to reach you and be reached by you wherever you are by using a free conference code line. Let's talk about what it's like for the child in those initial few days. First of all, they're pretty exhausted. It's kind of like they're more in shock than anything to this culture shock that they're going through. So they've taken this early flight, especially from the East Coast. They're tired, they're exhausted. There hasn't really started to sink in. In fact, in many cases, some cases, if a child is less stable, I will want to see them the first day or two out in the field. But in many cases, I would rather see the child their third, fourth, or fifth day in the field because they've had that chance to settle in a little bit. But they come out, they've been transported in many cases, sometimes by you, sometimes by professionals, and then transported by us the rest of the way. They get a physical, they get a drug test that you can ask for information on, and it's made sure by our doctor doing the physical that they're able to participate in mildly strenuous activities like hiking and backpacking. They're outfitted, so all of their clothing needs, all of their gear needs are taken care of at base before they head out into the field, and we train and teach them the very basics of how to pack a pack and how to use a backpack. And then, of course, we drive them out to the field. They arrive in the group, and they're welcomed first by the staff. And they'll usually sit down with them as soon as possible, as soon as they arrive, and give them a short orientation to the program. And what that does include is an introduction to a mentor. So one student, it's been assigned by the therapist or the staff, is assigned to mentor your child, your young adult or adolescent child. They come in, they tell their story, they take care of them, they make sure that they're warm and dry, they're making sure that they're eating and getting served food, they're making sure they know how to tend to the fire, and they also will sometimes not just share their story, but listen to the child's story. So the staff have a lot of contact in those early few days during Earth phase, and so does that mentor have a lot of contact. And sometimes the initial stage is an indication of what we will call an extinction burst, which is that when this kind of intervention is used with a child, often their defenses initially come up. And for us as therapists, that's not a bad thing because people's defenses tell us as much about them as when they open up. They tell us about what they're afraid of and what they're trying to protect and where they feel vulnerable. They lead us to places to understand where their pain and their trauma is, and they also tell us a little bit about their environment. I can tell when a child is trying to please me, of course, or is trying to defy, right, rebel against everything, every authority, everything that we're talking about, or when a child is checked out and not present, when a child is apologetic and full of shame and guilt. So all of those various ways of responding to the program initially really do educate me as a therapist and our staff about the child, their wound, their pain, and also their context and their environment. I'll say to students often, I'll say, I'm not your parent. I'm not your priest, your rabbi. I'm not your probation officer. I'm something entirely different, and you're not used to that yet. You're used to responding to me the way that you do in your typical environment with teachers and parents and others, and I'm none of those things. So we start to learn, and I suppose the take-home lesson this early on in the webinar could be for that is we can learn to listen better to our children. What do our children tell us about themselves unintentionally? And there's this old saying I learned in college that somebody shared with me in college that said, "What you tell me about the devil tells me more about you than it does about the devil." And what that really illustrates is although students are telling us things about you, themselves, us, the program, their issues, it is a deeper level of listening that allows us really to make that connection and that assessment with the child, which is why many of you will say in the first week or two after visiting with your child and having him in our program with our staff and their peers for a short period of time, you'll say, it sounds like you really get my son or my daughter. You get them as well as somebody who had been doing 1 hour a week therapy for several months because the environment is so contained and it is a great milieu for observation, for the natural reaction, for seeing the way that the child really interacts with the world. And that includes nature, peers, frustration, sadness, difficulty, loneliness, anger, all those things. So, what's the child going through? A typical experience that happens every week in our group is we do some form of what we call a Milan group. And this is a staff exchange where the outgoing staff and the incoming staff overlap for half of a day. And the outgoing staff and the student themselves share with the incoming staff a review of the previous week, strengths, weaknesses, difficulties, challenges, successes, struggles for that week. They'll tell stories and examples from the week. And part of that is we want to increase awareness for your child. And we want to also be fairly transparent with everything that we're thinking and doing. Of course, there could be moments where you would be strategic, or there might be something that you or the student might not want to share in front of the entire group, but that's going to be the exception to the rule. And this is also practice for the child just to hear other people. I think one of the handful of things that I find most remarkable is how children adjust to just listening to feedback. In fact, we did a Milan group enactment, a role play with parents a couple of years ago at a parent meeting. And I can tell you this, most of the parents were frustrated and angry with us afterwards. We did the same kind of thing that we would do with students. And what we're trying to say is, this is my observation. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm thinking. Here's my belief about the situation. And what the student learns to do is try it on for size. You know, that saying we have in the field, if it fits, let it sit. If it doesn't fly, if it doesn't apply, let it fly. So we're teaching them just to hear and actually to open up, to not have to engage. And so there's a period during Milan where they're just listening to staff, the staff exchange and the therapist exchange going back and forth. They have a therapist visit every week. The therapist is in the field 2 days a week, and that's not just for sessions. We also do groups, and we have some other time that we'll spend eating or sitting or playing a game with your student. And this is important. Some people early on say, why isn't the therapist there more? Or even the student will say, I wish the therapist was here more often. And the fact of the matter is, we're not doing it on accident. This is by design. Therapy or the richness of therapy is really what goes on in between the sessions. And in many cases, students would prefer a talk therapy session every day because in many cases, that's the easier task of the week. The hard task for all of us, not just for your child, is putting it into practice. So it's important that there's that space in between the sessions. Beside the fact that probably one of the most underreported, the most unsung heroes of this whole process are the field staff. And for those of you who have met the field staff, you would know that these people are incredibly well trained by us in therapeutic method. And they run groups all day, every day. They run them in the moment. It relates to everything. So that's going on always in between. And they take the notes that the therapist writes. In fact, we write in duplicate for adolescents and in triplicate for young adults. And they have those notes for the week. So they're following the treatment plan that gets created every week by the therapist in the session. Of course, there's hiking and physical activity nearly every day except for on layover days. We want to take with the new student, we want to help them adjust to it. So we're going to only move as quickly as the slowest member or the newest member of the group can move. And that first period where they are alone during earth phase, not reacting with the group as a whole, is, of course, part of it is time for reflection, time to just look at yourself. But another important part of it is it gives us the opportunity to observe, to teach, and to socialize your child into the program via the staff and a chosen mentor rather than the whole group. So that observation and feedback and training is going on initially also. Of course, we want them to acclimate. They're outside of their comfort zone. Even those who are pretty comfortable hiking, it's, being in a therapy program. Can you imagine yourself being in and walking in a therapy program where all of your issues are being shared and talked about? And of course, it's probably the safest place emotionally they're going to be, and physically in many cases, that they're going to be their entire life, at least their young life. But it's an incredibly vulnerable and strange adjustment. And so what they're doing in that initial phase is they're watching and they're listening, but then they're also being asked eventually to join the group. It's not a time of isolation, like it says here, but rather a time of mindfulness, or what the Buddhists call noble silence. This is one of the most common questions. This is a very rough outline of a typical day where they're waking up. There's some initial conversations about the plan for the morning, at least. We usually don't talk about any future information, including what's going to be happening that day. We might even say, get ready for a hike. And they'll say, where are we going? We'll say, we'll talk about that when it's time. We try to encourage them by our very process to live in the moment. So they have breakfast. There's typically 2 larger groups a day, and there's several standing groups that happen spontaneously throughout the day, initiated by any one of the students or the staff. But a couple of bigger themed groups, sometimes those are assigned by the therapist. Sometimes those groups are a product of the assignments that they're working on, because there are several of the assignments that they are asked to share with the group and get feedback. Then there's some hiking. We'll have lunch in the afternoon. We want them to have personal time every day, if at all possible, to work on reading and writing. So they'll have some personal time. They can work on their school curriculum. There'll be more hiking. They'll when they arrive at camp, they have chores that they rotate every day, and usually one person, a more senior member of the group, is in charge of organizing the groups. They'll have an organizational group to announce it for the day and then remind people during the day. So they'll set up camp. They're going to build a fire and get ready for dinner. Dinner prep and eat takes a couple of hours, and then we go into our evening group. And then sometimes after evening group, we'll read stories. There might be a guitar out there where they're going to sing songs, or we play games. They become expert at playing games and really having sober fun, healthy fun. So that's an important part of the process. Oops, I skipped a slide. These are things that can happen throughout their time. There are standing groups, which I mentioned, that last anywhere from a couple of minutes to 15 minutes. Sometimes those can lead to sitting groups. Individual sessions can happen with the therapist. Of course, they happen once a week, and the staff are asked to have 2 individual sessions with your child each week. Layovers are days that we don't hike, where we're taking care of a lot more writing and reading. Those are the days typically that the therapist is there, and we're also taking care of logistical items like food distribution and laundry. They're cleaning out their old laundry and changing their clothes and taking showers, and they're turning their old laundry in so it can be washed. They take showers, like I said. They're asked to take showers twice a week. That's a part of a healthy plan that we have for all of them. And then there's some personal time to follow up on those assignments that are difficult to do when you're moving around and hiking a lot, like reading and writing. Family visits and calls are a common occurrence in most of our groups. So having a family there is not just beneficial and enlightening for the student who's receiving the visit, but everybody gets to see that. And I think for many students, and parents for that matter, even though it might not be their visit, it gives them a sense of security. It gives them a sense of connection, because they're seeing what it's like. Then they know that this is not a forever situation. They know that the goal is reunification and family health. And they'll have conversations by proxy in many ways with other parents when they're visiting. So they'll ask them, like, why did you send your son here? And part of that is to find out about this individual child and their parents' story. But part of it that they're asking about is to find out about their own story. And parents will say similar things to the children. They'll talk to them as kind of a general representative of how hard it is and how much your parents love you and the work that's going on at home. So family calls that can lead to a group can be another part of it. So that can happen obviously a couple of different days a week, where a child will have a family call with the therapist, and sometimes a family call without the therapist. And then they'll come back and they'll process it. So that's, again, the family work is a part of the culture out there, and they get to observe that and participate in that. There are really 2 kinds of curriculum: hard skills and soft skills, and then therapy assignments would probably fall under the soft skills. Hard skills are wilderness living. Learning how to tie knots, learning how to build a shelter, learning how to pack your pack and organize yourself, learning how to make a fire, learning how to make a spoon, carve a spoon. So all of those things, leaving no trace, all of those things are what we call hard skills. The soft skills are communication skills, listening to feedback, developing insightful language, learning maybe a theme that week might be of trying to extinguish some of your thinking errors or the shoulds that you're dealing with. So those are all of the assignments that are more about the psychology of things. Maybe I should say more intellectual of things, whereas the other process is still psychological, but it's more experiential and kinesthetic. So hard skills and soft skills. We want a balance. There are some people who want to do all the hard skills, and then we have some students who just want to do the talking stuff. And of course, we know the value of our program is in the combination of the two. And then the therapist, on top of the basic curriculum that's outlined in their packet, the therapists and the staff are adding on assignments that are particular or relevant to your child. There's academic curriculum, which I already mentioned. Letters to and from home become a focus throughout the week. Solos is a 2 to 4 day experience where we set them out, and they have to earn that. They have to earn that trust. We'll set them out. We'll check on them several times a week, but they're set in an area around the staff camp where they can't see or talk to anybody else, and they learn to sit with themselves. It really is an intensification, is that a word? Intensifying experience of wilderness therapy. It's time, somebody said to me one time, I love this description of it, it's time to spend time with yourself and see how you like the company. I think a lot of us could benefit from practicing some solo time. So that's part of the process. Early on, sometimes the students will say, clients will say they hated it. Sometimes they'll say the second time, they loved it, but we give them the experience all the same. And some of that time on solo, we don't have them work on assignments. We don't give them any writing or reading material. And they're asked to stay awake all day until nightfall or until an hour after sunrise. So that's what we're asking them to do. And like I said, we come and check on them. And if they need help, they can call us and we can come. Chores are a part of it. That becomes, like the next bullet point says, that becomes part of the grist for the therapeutic mill. Everything in wilderness therapy is therapy, right? Everything, it's easy to make a connection between the frustration of bow drill fire making and building a shelter and the rain and the bugs. There's a connection between dealing with those elements, those activities, and dealing with things at home. And sometimes we're making those connections often and very overt, and sometimes we let them speak for themselves. But overall, we create this theme for the child, this experience that gives them a mirror to really look back into themselves. So that's why the therapy sessions, while they are the cornerstone, the reference point for the week, the value, the magic of wilderness therapy is the wilderness, is the primitive living. And that's why we're so committed to this model. Also, that there will be mindful activities, yoga activities, and meditation activities. As part of our Evoke philosophy, we focus on body, mind, and spirit. And we know that meditation does very well to treat mood and anxiety disorders. We know it does very well to increase gratitude. We know it does very well to improve a person's capacity to feel and to be aware of their thoughts. So we're teaching that throughout the process. And we know from the research, not just because it's intuitive for us, we know that meditation, mindfulness, activities, and practice make a solid contribution to mental health and recovery. What is your experience? You are going through a roller coaster, right? There are ups and downs, and it comes in waves. And sometimes there's a feeling of relief. Sometimes there's guilt. Sometimes there's guilt for feeling relief. Sometimes there's a lot of fear and anxiety, especially in that first week. This is why the mentor part of the process is so important. And this is why this just happened to me at a recent parent meeting where somebody came in. They had their child with us for a couple of days. And I have this over and over and over again, where then I come back the next month or 2 months later, and their response to me is, I remember being that way. I'm in such a different place, and I remember being there for that first time. That's one of the reasons why we do the parent support groups when we do them, where we do them, because we want you all who are more experienced to be able to share that wisdom, that strength with those that are still struggling with this culture shock of sending your child to these people that you've been asked to trust, but you don't know personally and what that experience is like for you. There's a sadness and a loss, for sure, of normal life about what was supposed to be, right? This is one of the critical pieces in parenting in general, and the critical pieces of any of you, whatever stage that you're at, is to shift away from, and it's hard. It's a transformation to shift away from. This is the way that it was supposed to be. I had this plan. She was supposed to walk down the stairs with her prom dress on, right? We were supposed to be going to his sports games. We were supposed to be going to their activities and watching them graduate and having parent teacher conferences. That's what was supposed to be happening, and family holidays, and that is a loss. And the only way through that is through that. And I would encourage you to experience it the same way we encourage your children to experience it, which is to feel about it and talk about it. There are a lot of assignments in the Parent Journey packet that ask you to write and even share with at least one other person your experience or your awarenesses. And so part of each phone call, even for the therapist, can be you talking about what it's like for you. And so these are all normal feelings to go through. Sometimes it's resentment. There's a sense of emptiness, especially because not only is it an empty nest, but it was an empty nest before it was supposed to happen. And he was supposed to be off in college, or she was supposed to be off in college, and this is happening not at the right time. And again, going back to the idea of radical acceptance, that there's this idea that what causes the greatest suffering in human beings is our inability to accept reality. That doesn't mean we become passive about it, but that means that we embrace it, whatever it is, even if it's a challenge or an invitation to grow a new skill, to grow a new aspect, a new characteristic of ourselves. And so this event, this situation that for some of you has been going on for years and is maybe culminating in the placement of your child at Evoke, but it is the thing that is there to teach you something. And when you can look at it like that, you will then have access to wisdom and new strengths and tools and insights and feelings and peace and clarity. You'll have access to those things. Whereas if we constantly focus on what shouldn't be, this shouldn't be happening, we are off course. We are off track. If you think of it that way, then it's going to be hard to internalize, to digest, to accept the gifts that this very difficult, painful, scary process, experience, situation has to offer. What to tell people? I ask people not to fight all the dragons early on, right? You can only have enough energy to fight one dragon. And so telling a lot of people may or may not feed you. It may or may not exhaust you, but you get to set the boundary. Know this, that when you tell people, you don't get to choose how they respond. However, I will tell you, and a lot of parents can attest to this, that when they've shared this experience with others, people just come out of the woodwork with similar stories, either that they've gone through or that they're just starting to confront and deal with in their lives. So my experience is when we take down the walls, that works two ways. And I tend to be more, I don't do it with everybody, I don't do it with every stranger, but I tend to be more self-disclosing, as you might have observed by now, and transparent about this because everybody has somebody in their life that's struggling with mental health or addiction. Everybody does. Everybody has a loved one that is struggling or they themselves are struggling. So I tend to get more out of the support. And like I said, not everybody's going to react the way you want. If you approach it knowing that, then you're in good shape. You can have a feeling of isolation. The letters that you get from home, I think we prepare parents well for the angry, attacking, and blaming letter. But it's just as common for parents to receive a flight to health, meaning I'm cured, I'm fixed, or an apology letter, some combination of I promise I'll never do it again letter. So, this is also resistance because it's not realistic. And things did not come to this point, right? They didn't arrive to this point overnight. They arrived from patterns. They arrived from months or even years of experience and development. So it's not going to go away quickly, and we want to get through it one way or the other. And I don't think they're being, when they promise it, most of the time they're not being insincere. That's the question I get asked. Are they being honest? Are they being sincere? Is this real? And my response is they're being sincere, but it's not insightful, right? When a child makes a promise, they may mean it as much as they have the capacity to mean it, but it doesn't necessarily demonstrate or come from a place of insight, awareness, and maturity. So that's where we take it through our parent filter. And we make our assessment independent of the words that they say in a given week, especially those early weeks. And we start to pay attention to the long game and to the behavior and to the patterns that begin to replace the old patterns. And it's also important to note at this point, because I'm just mindful of it, that your child is, most of you will have this experience that your child is never going to be in a place where he or she is going to have more safety, like I said before, but also more success. It is a small box that is tailored to the emotional needs of the children that are in that group all of the time. And there aren't many environments that are like that. That's why difficult news, that's why going through something specifically difficult for them out in the field, it's the best place for them to go through that or to experience that challenge. So it is a small box, and that small box also represents not just the structure, but a whole lot of support from staff, therapists, and from their peers. Of course, then there's the more manipulative, dishonest, exaggerative letters that some students will write. Oftentimes, we'll bring that back to the student out to the group after we share that with the parent. We'll have a group about it. And this can happen really with any of these letters, where students then start to hear from other students feedback about manipulation. And so it's so cool. I mean, this is so simple, but so cool. They start to become more aware of their behavior and what it means and where it comes from. And that's all part of developing a foundation that will allow them or invite them to live a healthier life. And it's not just awareness and insight, because that's part of therapy, but it's also practice. There's also structure. There's also reinforcement, right? There's a whole lot of empathic resonance that's going on out there with staff, peers, and specifically with the therapist. So those are core pieces of it. So it's all of those things. And the manipulation letters, they might work in week 1 or 2, but it becomes pretty clear to the child and to the parents, in most cases, the obviousness of the manipulation later on. In the early part of the process, you might want more updates than you're getting. And the fact of the matter is, no news is good news, right? We have these weekly phone calls. You'll have, ideally, your first week, you'll have a parent phone call. You'll have with your parent coordinator, excuse me. You'll have a mentor call. You'll have your first therapy call, sometimes 2 therapy calls if you're getting the 24-hour or 48-hour update from the therapist. Other than that, you're not getting updates, and we're letting things mature out there, right? We want to see several days put together, because it's not as important for us to provide you with snapshots as much as it is to provide you with what are the themes, what's the movie that's playing out here throughout the week. And it's interesting. I've thought about this many times, but if a parent were to drop in on a group or their child at any given point and make an assessment based on that half an hour or that hour, they would in many cases come away with the wrong impression. And I think the distance that gets created by this intervention is so healthy, because people work through the cycles themselves, right? Students will go through cycles of helplessness, frustration, anger, reactivity, quitting, inspiration, excitement, all in 1 week. And it's valuable for them to do that without the immediate presence of you, the immediate reaction of you. I remember I had one parent describing to me, they had taken their daughter to a young adult program, and they were giving me an update. I was talking to them a week later, and they were giving me an update about everything that was occurring every day. On Monday morning, this is the way she felt, and on Monday afternoon, she felt like this, and on Monday evening, this is what went on. And part of my feedback to them on that phone call is, I think you know too much about the daily mood swings and successes and struggles of your daughter. I think it would be valuable for you to take a step back and not hear and know about all those things. It's probably even developmentally appropriate. And although this is the case of a young adult, it's also very applicable for parents of adolescents to take that step back and learn to really, like I say all the time, learn to connect in a healthier way. Even though we call it detachment, it really is attachment. We provide siblings. In fact, we're due up to have another sibling webinar, but we provide sibling webinars. You're oftentimes dealing with the challenge of siblings that are at home not knowing how to explain it to them. I find, and this is why we like to do the sibling webinars, I find that sibling work is the exact same work as work with the identified patient. The same skills, the same questions, the same tools. The content is different, and the behavioral experience, the experience you're having of the child's behavior at home may be different. But it really does, like I always say, get back to those same core themes that for me apply to not only all of our children, however they're functioning, but actually all of our relationships. Your first tasks are to breathe. Take a deep breath. You're going to get that phone call from the parent coordinator to let you know that your child has arrived. You're going to be introduced to the parent coordinator. Your admissions person is going to call the consultant Just know that the first week for many people is a roller coaster. It's up and down. The impact letter is almost always your first letter. There's an impact letter webinar, there's an impact letter instruction page that you will get, and that will be the first letter. We don't want it to be punishing or punitive. It doesn't need to be shocking, but it can be honest, and sometimes that can be shocking, honestly. But it should be with love first, right? And it should be directed at, there's definitely parts in it where you talk about how you are affected, how you've been affected, but I've learned this now for almost 20 years in doing this, that it's really, really important that you talk about what it's doing to the child's life. That this isn't about you getting hurt or you getting worried or you being offended or angry with your child. That's a part of it. That can inform the letter somewhat. That can inform your child somewhat. But really, it is about how the child is ruining their life. This is about them and not about you. So I'll talk about that more when I redo the webinar on impact letters. In fact, I think the old, I don't think I emphasized that enough in the old impact letter webinar. Um, the you'll have a mentor. If you don't have one, ask for one right away. There are meetings that are available. There's a parent workshop out here that we do about every 6 weeks. We just finished one on the 18th and 19th, and I heard and I hear great things about it every time. We also now have parent intensives, so that's separate from the program. Your child doesn't even have to be at Evoke. Our next one is at the end of May. That's a 4-day process. This one is going to be run by me. Most of them are run by me right now, although we're going to train more people. That includes psychodrama, mindfulness, wilderness activities, readings, therapy sessions, role plays, other wonderful spiritual, emotionally rich processes that we do out in our oasis, so that we have some of the creature comforts, but we also have immediate access because it's set right in the middle of our field area. It has hot water and areas to cook and plumbing and also even electricity. So there are meetings and intensives, there are readings and webinars to be looking at. Those are some of the ways that you can occupy yourself. You know, if your anxiety is so high that it's just hard to be present, some of the ways to support you is to get you working on these things. There are some books. There's my book, The Journey of the Heroic Parent. There's Shouting at the Sky, a book by Gary Ferguson, where he went out and lived with kids out there for a couple of weeks, in my group actually, and another group, and then shared his experience. It's more of a storyteller's version. It's not as clinical as many of the other books. And then there's also books that are related to, you can always go to, in fact, we post it at the end of every webinar, you can always go to the Parent Alumni Foundation page on Amazon. It's a Smile account, and a portion of the proceeds go to charity there. So you can go there and look at books that are related to areas that you're interested in for your parenting or for your child. And then, of course, you're going to get a lot of information. They say it's like drinking from a fire hose. You're going to get a lot of connection assignments. Just put that in a folder. Take your time. There's a lot to take in. We're really sensitive to the fact that we're giving you so much new information. There's so many assignments. We know that, and to some extent, I want to apologize for that. But we get complaints on the other side from some parents too that say they want more. So we think of our curriculum as something that we want you to match and feel good about, and that also is going to complement the process and the progress that your child is going through in the program, and really helping you develop the skills, the tools, the insights to best support your child going forward. And then the best also to be the healthiest parent that you can be. Like I say, the outcome, I'm going to pause for a moment and say this very emphatically. The outcome of healthy parenting is a happy, peaceful, serene, confident, and clear parent. The outcome of healthy parenting is not necessarily well-behaved children. That's very important. And I will tell you that happy, serene, confident, clear, hopeful parent, that parent who is that way, has a dramatically positive impact on anyone that he or she comes into contact with. So that's part of why we do it also. Weekly letters and journals, sometimes pictures, sometimes videos. Some therapists will do videos. Those are available through the parent portal. Sometimes they are sent to you by the therapist, so you'll be getting those. You can really see the progress that your child goes through by looking at their pictures. I think a lot of you would, again, attest to this idea that you could line the pictures up week 1 through 8 of your child, and you would be able to see the progress even if you didn't get any report or get any letters. And then, of course, if you're able to attend any one of our parent support groups or parent meetings, anywhere. We encourage you to. We also ask you to attend 6 Al-Anon or Families Anonymous or Codependence Anonymous meetings while your child is with us. So get on those as soon as possible. The basics of the program, this is some of the stuff that we've already talked about. The Journey Packet is their emotional curriculum that contains the hard skills, the soft skills. They're moving through levels that are symbolically related to different stages of growth. So the earth phase is about acclimation and orientation and adjustment. Fire phase is about accountability and cooperation. And then it moves to more insightful phases like the water phase, which is about beginning to have a lot more insight and to be able to internalize it. And then air phase is a rare category that clients and students achieve, but that is focusing on the future, focusing on a bigger life plan, focusing on leadership and service and giving back. So they're going through those. And again, it's graded on a personal curve. So for some people, being on fire phase when they graduate is fantastic. For others, we know, they know they can do more. And so sometimes the phases are related to privileges. Sometimes they're related to the discharge date. And sometimes, again, we think of them in terms of where the child is at because we're an assessment program. We're a stabilization, assessment, and treatment program. And not everybody comes in with the same level of acuity, with the same level of difficulties, and with the same amount of resources. And then, of course, there's your work. And that's what we're doing right now, your work. The best thing you can do for your child is your work. And I say that on every webinar. So at the beginning of webinars, the best way to impact your child is to focus on changing yourself. And that's really true of any relationship. It's really true of the world. Like I said, the meetings, the webinars, readings and letters that you'll be writing. We don't direct every letter every week, and we don't direct every letter every week to the child. We coach and teach and talk to them about it the same way we might with you, but it's not really our desire to dictate the letter. And sometimes imperfections get back and forth between the letter, meaning that sometimes you'll stumble or be reactive or be angry. Sometimes we'll coach you on that, and sometimes we won't, and then we'll talk about it later. Because we don't want this to be psychologically and emotionally sterile. We want it to be real. It's already way outside of everybody's comfort zone, and so there's enough of that challenge. So the letters, you can talk about in your letters. There's a webinar on letter writing where you can talk about your experiences at home, what your work is. You can give feedback about what you're hearing, on the weekly phone call with the therapist. You can share what you're learning in your own therapy or even on a webinar or in reading. You can just share news from your life. And your therapist will give you often some general direction about not to do and to do items in each particular week's letter. Like I said, it's an assessment program, a treatment program. It's also preparing for the next step. We provide stabilization, meaning that in a crisis, this is a nice place for both the child and the parent to catch their breath, to get things very clear, to make an assessment in a very contained, psychologically speaking environment, and then to find out where the next step ought to take the child and the family. We make individual treatment plans. We do that every week. We write it down. We're reading from it on your phone calls often. We're bringing those notes. We leave a copy with the adolescent staff, with the staff members of the adolescents, and with the young adults, we leave a copy with the staff members and the adults themselves, with the adults. So they get their own copy. And then the staff schedules go from Tuesday to Tuesday, and they overlap all day Tuesday. So they work all day Tuesday, and they overlap a significant amount with training and in-service preparation, and also that time in the field that I described where they have the group. And then the therapist will be there 2 days. Sometimes it's 2 back-to-back days. Sometimes it's some therapists will do it with a day in between. So you'll find out about your therapist's schedule and how that works. And then, of course, they have everything that they need. They have all the medicine. They have all the lip balm. They have all the sunscreen. They have all the gear that they need to be safe. And that, in fact, all of those things, including sunscreen, including lip balm, if they have dry lips, is a part, not only of something we pay attention to, but it's actually a part of the things that they're asked to sign off on daily. And the staff monitor that. So when they don't wear sunscreen, it is to great effort. It took great effort to not wear it because we're observing that all the time. And we're observing the water that they drink and the food that they drink and making sure that they're healthy in those ways too. And like I said, we're a program that focuses on mind, body, spirit, so it all is wrapped up into one. So we ask you to trust the process, but not blindly. You get to ask questions. You get to give your honest reactions to things that you're hearing, to worries, to anxieties. I tell the story that when I sent my son to our program, what was it now, 9 years ago, that the mistake I made when I was talking to the therapist is I was trying to be a good parent. I was trying to be that ideal parent. And what I found out, in fact, I got the feedback from a colleague that I was just sharing with him my experience, and he said, Brad, you trying to be a good parent is getting in the way of the truth. It's getting in the way of honesty. It's actually getting in the way of what you could possibly get out of the program. So it's important that you ask questions, and it's also important that you listen to the answers, and you'll get better. I mean, part of this process is you get better at meaning what you say. And when you ask a question, really listening to the answer. You learn through this process. I learned this through this process. I'm learning more and more throughout my life that when I ask a question, I learn pretty quickly if it was what I really meant. Because if it's what I really meant to ask, then the answer satisfies me. If asking a question is really about me being frustrated or disappointed or hurt or angry or whatever it is, then the answer never satisfies me. So you learn through this exchange to know about yourself. So listen to the answers, ask the questions, be honest, share your experience. We invite you to be vulnerable, and really, to a fraction of the extent that we ask your children to be out in the field, or that you're asking your children to be out in the field. So if for nothing else, you get to have that experience so that you can have a taste of what it's like for your children. Talk with your therapist, state your needs, requests, complaints, questions, and opinions, and then listen. Tell us what you want on the phone calls. You know, we assume, I think most therapists assume you want 90% of an update, 90% of the time spent giving you an update about your child. Stories, examples, progress, struggles, challenges, successes, so forth. That might not be the case. I like to make my phone calls, I like to start off with questions and agendas that the parents have. So, you know, a lot of times, some of my best phone calls, my favorite phone calls are the ones where we talk about the child for 10 minutes, and then we talk about the family and the parents and letters for the next 45 minutes. Those are often the richest and most rewarding for me and for the family. So let them know what you would like more of or less of on the phone call. And you get to ask questions. You have the right to ask questions, and you have the right to have those questions answered by a therapist. They love it when I say that. They say, my parents keep telling me you say they can ask tough questions. And of course, I remind them that they can, that you can. All right, I'll take any live questions. Any of you more experienced parents who just want to submit a comment to Stephanie, and Stephanie will post that also, you're welcome to do. There are more experienced parents on here, and there are new parents on here. So I have 3 children. My second one went through the Footsteps program, then aftercare, and came back home as a freshman in high school and is doing well. I just sent my daughter 4 years later, at almost 14 years old, to a DBT, that's dialectical behavioral facility. It's a form of therapy. DBT facility today. I'm struggling. She was so little when her brother went through what he did. I have so many emotions I can't identify them all. Some things are better, but she is presenting similar symptoms and also manipulation issues. I'm sure she is if she's in a DBT program. We have fallen into old patterns. Her father is angry, not able to ask questions or seek to understand when something is wrong. And me, softening things when my husband is too harsh, also making it so that I control who's home when so that there's less conflict when our daughter is home. I want to say something mostly complimentary to this parent. Um, you're doing great. You're dealing with an extraordinary situation in a very normal way. What I love most about this is that you can talk about it and explain it. Folks, this is important. This is one of these key principles in parenting and in life, psychologically speaking, that we don't have to be perfect. But how we make sense out of our experience, how we own our own mistake and can talk about it, and the more we can really do that, really have that internalized in us, the more we can provide a healthy environment for our children. Because if they're waiting for us to get it perfect and get it right, they're doomed, right? But if we can be human, and we can be present, and we can be honest, and we can make our own lives our project, that's all we can do, right? And the better we do at making our lives our project, guess what else happens? The better we make it, that they are required to make their life their project. So your old patterns are coming back. You know, my thought is, I feel for you. My first reaction and feeling, and impressed with your thought process. And then my second part is this is another step in the journey, and you know this, you're saying it, where new skills, tools that were perhaps maybe not required recently are going to emerge, right? That's what this parenting the addicted, mentally um, mental health struggling child does for us. Is it asks of us, it grows things in us, right? So that we become a bigger person. Old things that were a part of us die off, and new things are born. And this is the transformation of parenting difficult children, or children, I should say, who are struggling. But I love your awareness. Thanks for sharing that. The good news, my husband just called, has been out, and told him I was on the webinar listening to Brad Reedy. He might actually come back to Brad. He said never a bad episode with Brad Reedy. Thank you for making these webinars available to alumni. Falling off the wagon is probably more common than you might like to know. I know it because I ride wagons also, and I'm constantly falling off and getting back on, and that's the journey, right? That's the life. And really, for those there are, I see several alumni here that I might not have seen recently. You may or may not know that my book came out, which is called The Journey of the Heroic Parent. It's I'll show it at the end of every webinar for the next year or so. But it really can be taking the webinar with you. And by the way, I just listened to the sample of it today. They have it on audible.com, and also they have it on CD. So they published it in four formats, which I'm really happy about. So a lot of parents have asked me over the years, and I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to start a podcast really soon, but have asked me for something they can take with them in driving, talk to that can be something they do while they're doing something else. So the book on an audio version is one, and then the podcast will be something else, and we'll get that started as soon as possible because that wagon is a slippery thing to stay on. For all of you parents beginning this journey, keep the faith and trust those who are well versed in helping these kids. Sorry, Stephanie, it went backwards. Sometimes it does that. Our experience is that our son was able to identify and see his problems and just begin to buy into to change. It was also the place that he began to see how his actions affected others. Now that he is at a residential treatment center, excuse me, now that he is at a residential treatment center, he has begun to work on the change necessary to get to a healthy place in life. Good luck to all of you. I talk about my son and that the fact that I sent him here 9 years ago. He's 22 now. I sent him when he was 13. He turned 14 in the woods. It wasn't that afterwards he didn't struggle. It wasn't that afterwards we didn't have problems or he didn't experience some crises. We had a foundation. We had a core. I had some awareness that I took away from that experience that I really couldn't have had any other way, I don't think. And we had a common language and we had a bridge and we had something to reflect back to we had a reference point to reference. And now he's 22 and he's been sober for several years now, and he's been on a surface mission and he's in college. Um, it's one of the pieces. It wasn't perfect afterwards, and it wasn't. It's a long game, right? It's a long book, and you're in one of the chapters, no matter where you are on the journey. And part of my own story is to share with you that these principles, these ideas, these skills can go dormant in adults or in children. They can go dormant for a time, but it's there. They're there. And when they turn the corner, they'll draw upon that wisdom, that strength, and that experience that they had many years ago. So it takes obviously I have a perspective because I've been doing it for almost 20 years now. And so I've seen children and parents and families go through this process thousands and thousands of times. And I get that vantage point of that bird's eye view of things. But the other thing I would say is that when it's in your own family, in your own home, the pain, the fear, the anxiety is sometimes overwhelming and much more powerful. But I share that idea to just offer that perspective that I'm blessed to be able to have because of where I sit. Can we just put in a plug for the parents workshop? We attended last weekend and we found it transformative, and it was great to understand some of what our son is experiencing in the field. We thank you. We've done all but making it a requirement for enrollment. We've asked. We want every parent to do it. It is the parent workshop that they're speaking of that will be scheduled again. Um, is every parent raves about it's a wonderful experience. We have the parent intensive where you actually go out and live out there, and you get into a lot more personal work, and the groups can be smaller, and it's a lot more therapy. But the parent workshop is relatively inexpensive. It's fairly easy to get to because you fly into Las Vegas, and it's a drive from there. Um, if everybody, we want everybody to do it. We ask everybody to do it, and we realize that there are sometimes logistically there's some reasons why people can't do it, but I I I hear raving about it every time that people go to it. So thank you for sharing that, and that's what I hear every time. Insight since August 4th, 2014 started this journey for our family. Sorry, much sounds like Dr. Reedy. My son is in aftercare now and doing well. Breathe. Watch the webinars, connect, reconnect with your spouse or co parent, work on your relationship, listen, sleep, observe the process, join the process, find out about as much as you can learn about your child, consult a therapist for you, let go of the life you plan to accept the life that is waiting for you. Joseph Campbell. That's it. Let go of the life that you had planned so that you can accept the life that is waiting for you. I know that's hard for the new parents, but I don't mind saying it early on. I'm glad a parent said it. I don't mind saying it early on because then you'll recognize it, right? It doesn't feel good. I've had parents complain about this talk about me saying the wisdom and the gifts that parenting a child who's struggling are going to offer you. I have parents actually call me, email me, telling me how upsetting that is to hear. And I think that I've missed an opportunity in those cases to resonate with them, to demonstrate empathy with them. I think that's true. And I don't mind saying it early on because now you can start asking, well, I don't have that yet. And what does that look like? And you'll recognize it when it comes. And really, for me, the heroic parent, the transformation from being a victim to circumstances to life to becoming a hero in your own life is to say, my circumstances aren't going to dictate my core sense of happiness and suffering, right? That's going to come because of the way that I see the world, the way that I embrace the world, the way that I engage the world. And that includes my child. And most of you, this is one of those other principles. I didn't know this webinar was going to be so rich in terms of the parenting principles. I thought it was just going to be week one. But the important thing that I want to say to you is that the greatest thing that you can do in this process, the greatest characteristic that you can develop is the idea to embrace and ride what is given you. And so much of the time, we are swimming upstream. We are going against the current. We are paying attention to what should be or what shouldn't be. And we miss the opportunity to ride the flow. And again, that doesn't mean passivity. That means that you embrace the challenge sometimes, you embrace the change sometimes. And in those moments when we're low, in those moments when we're hurting, when we're scared, it still does hurt. It still is scary. But a new us will come out of it. I have time for one more, Stephanie, if you want to do one more. That's all. Perfect. All right, folks. Thanks for everybody. Thanks for the senior parents, the experienced and alumni parents sharing their thoughts and ideas. Like I said, you can actually email Gail at evoketherapy.com to ask her about the next workshop. That'll be scheduled soon. We're calling our parent intensive the Heroic Parenting. You can go to our website. We just redid the section on our programs on the intensives. I just redid it today. So May 28th through the 31st, that's a Thursday afternoon to a Sunday afternoon. I'll be hosting this one. You can email Stephanie at evoketherapy.com or go there to our programs for more information. Our parent support group's coming up, Austin, Texas on May 1st. Let us know if you're going to be at any of these, please, as soon as possible. Austin, Texas, Costa Mesa on April 29th. You see the different emails there to respond to. Los Angeles and Marin County. I'm going to do an East Coast tour uh, either the week of May 18th or the week of June 7th or 8th. I think it's the 8th. I'm going to decide on that on the next day or two. So by Sunday's webinar, I will have that announcement and it will be on our web. Here's my book. It's available now. You actually can get it. I've had several nice emails from several people telling me about it. So, um, yeah, that really does take this philosophy and actually several of the webinars of my favorite webinars and expand and expound on them. We want you to go to these parent support groups, 6 of these while your child is with us, just to at least give them a chance. Here's our social media. If you've liked us on Second Nature before, please like us on Evoke. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook. You'll see announcements, articles, pictures, stories there. We have our blog. Our blog is going really well. We're blogging twice a week. We actually have a stack of blogs ready to go, including, in fact, one that was written by one of you that's in the hopper that's going to be about parent support and parent meetings. Then we have that Alumni Foundation page that I described where you can go there and buy a book, and a portion of that goes to charity. We are going to do a Sunday open forum. We had a really good experience with open forum. We'll take leftover questions from last week's topic forum to topic webinar to start with, but we're going to do it at 2 p.m. on Mountain Time. That's Sunday, the 26th, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. So join me then and have a great week. I hope these points of contact are helpful. If you're watching this webinar and you're new to the program, just breathe. It'll feel very different in a week or 2 or 3, and it'll be a place that, for most of you, will be one of the best, one of the highlights of your child's young life to this point. So thank you. Have a great night, and I'll talk to you Sunday. Bye-bye.